to do this video on turning an apple based on an article I'd seen in a recent issue of the American Woodturner by Richard Finley, a professional woodturner in the UK. I did a video almost 10 years ago on turning an apple, but I think the approach in this video is better. When it comes to wood for an apple, most any wood will work, preferably dry wood, but at least if it's green wood, dry enough where it won't split on you. Spalted is good. Anything with figure or grain is good. I'm going to use this piece of spalted sweet gum I had in my yard because it's got some nice figure to it. So we're going to put that in there. You want a piece about 3 inches square. I'm going to use a spindle roughing gouge to get this down. When you have a piece of bark like this, especially a larger piece, it's not so bad. Take it down 1 inch at a time, get rid of that bark so you don't get a big flap come flying off at you. Get the speed up a little bit. Yeah, this got some nice spalting, so this will look very nice. So we want it about 3 inches. That's a little bit less than 3 inches, 2 5/8. That's close enough. So now we're going to go up ahead and put a tenon on one end. I'll use a beading and parting tool for that. Okay. So we got a nice tenon for that chuck. Make it match your chuck. In this case, I'm using record power with parallel jaws for the normal jaws, not a dovetail. A lot of people make that mistake. I'll go ahead and bring up tailstock support, whether I need it or not. And I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. So this is 2 3/4 inches, just about spot on. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that. Use my thin parting tool, part it off. Actually, this is not going to make much of a I could use this as a scrap for something, so I'm going to go ahead and put a tenon on it before I part it off. Some jam chip project. These are kind of scraps that are just real handy to keep. The tenon's going to be the top, this is going to be the bottom, so we're going to go ahead and finish shaping that. Let's go ahead and remove this, get it out of the way. I'm not going to need that anymore. So let's just go ahead and shape the bottom. I want to mark the center visually of what the center of this is because it'll guide me on the shape a little bit. We want to make the tallest part or the widest part a little bit more toward the top, so somewhere probably closer to that, maybe 5 millimeter off the center toward the top. And you can use a small bowl gouge, or you could use a spindle gouge. I'm going to use a spindle gouge. Projects larger than 2 inches, I tend to prefer a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. Anchor the tool, ride the bevel. Let's bring it around. Bring it on in there. Work on the roundness here.
I misspoke. The tenon's actually on the bottom end. I'm going to go ahead and turn the top. So I drew this line on the wrong end. I'm going to raise it up just a little bit. That's going to be the widest part right there, because we're going to go ahead and finish this top, and then we're going to mount this on the screw chuck here. In order to get in here nice and deep, I actually switched to a 1/4 inch detail gouge. It's got fairly pointed, and that allows me to get in deep. Here's a picture of an apple showing you, giving you some feel for what it might look like, where we're supposed to go with this. We need to go deep. Okay, I'm going to round this over just a little bit, and I find the easiest way to do that is to use a negative rake scraper. In this case, I'm going to use my skew. Just very lightly get rid of tool marks and to keep that profile nice and round. I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole in here for the screw chuck that we're going to be using. I could use it 9/64 on the drill chuck, but I find it for this purpose just as easy to use this handy drill bit mounted in a handle. I've already got that divot in there. Well, not as clean the divot as I'd like, so let's go back to using the, I think I can get in there with this beading tool here. Get rid of that little bump that's sticking out. Okay, now it's centered. Okay, now we're just about ready to reverse this. I want to sand it first. Okay, let's make a screw chuck. We'll take any spindle blank that you've got. Keep these in a box when you have other projects, part things off. I already got a tenon, put it on there. It never hurts to use a, we're going to drill a hole in here. I'll talk about that in a moment. It never hurts to make a starter hole out of, you know, with a starting bit to help it run true. But frankly, no matter what you do, they're never going to run perfectly true. So this may be a wasted step, but let's do it anyway. Okay, so we got a nice true with a stiff bit. Now we're going to shift that to a smaller drill bit. You want to, what we're going for is a screw that'll stick out maybe about 1 inch. You want to drill a hole about 1/64 inch smaller than the drill bit where the screw we're going to be using. So let's go ahead and do this. This is 9/64, just a bit bigger than 1/8. And get the speed up just a little bit, and we just slowly feed it in here. Let it find center. Then we can speed it up. And it's through. Take that out. Take the drill chuck out. Take the scrap out. And I find it faster and easier to use a electric screwdriver. Now, some people advocate gluing these things with epoxy, CA, whatever. I find it not worth the effort because nothing I found ever holds it that well. And you can just tighten it up from the back. So I've got the top end sanded, hole drilled. Let's go ahead and take it off and mount it on the screw chuck. And I do that simply. Before we do, I'm going to put a few pads, layers of paper towel on here, maybe 3, and just start it on there. And turn it by hand. Actually, I could use a hand screwdriver. Probably will. This is a shop-made screwdriver, turn screwdriver. I'm going to go ahead and put this back on the chuck. Double check my measurements here. And so now we start rounding this over. I'm going to go ahead and bring up tailstock support for a little while. No reason to not use insurance. And that's what I consider. Sometimes tailstock support, kind of like a seatbelt. You wear it whether you need it or not. Hope you never need it. Okay. I'm going to switch to a smaller tool rest. Do a lot of stuff like I do. Small tool rest is awfully handy. Okay. Back to that 1/2 inch spindle gouge, and we're going to round it over, work on this end until we get close. Get the speed up a little bit. Oh, maybe around 1800. So we can get rid of some of this flapping nonsense here. Well, tear off a little bit. Okay. Alright, we'll switch to that detail gouge, make it easier to get in there. Back off the tailstock, get that out of the way. Maneuver the tool rest, get that a little bit closer. And use, again, this 1/4 inch detail gouge. I'm going to switch back to my skew as a negative brake scraper to kind of clean up that profile a little bit. It's a little flat here. Back off of this a little bit. Okay, now we'll just go ahead and sand that up. Get that out of the way. Starting with 120 grit. go for all the grits. After looking at this, I feel like I need to go a little bit wider, so I'm going to start coming in right about there. It pays to examine your work sometimes while you're mid route. Make sure you're not quitting too early, that you are taking that last cut. And pick up the cut and open it up. Okay. Alright, let's go ahead and take it off the screw chuck. And I like the shape. All we got to do now is turn the stock. Now I'm mounting my record power micro chuck with these dome jaws. If you're using small stock like this, and this should be no more than 3/8 of an inch, you can mount it where you could have a stick coming out the back end, and just as you turn them off the stalks, you could just keep bringing this out. So that's a great production technique. We're going to turn this stalk about 1.5 inches long. It's going to be about 3/8 of an inch in its widest point. Measure that. Or about 38 millimeter. So about a finger width from the end there. If something this small, I normally would not use my spindle roughing gouge. I would just use a skew or whatever tool I have handy, either skew or the spindle gouge. I'm using this like a skew, kind of rolled over, full cut. Down at this end, I wanted to get it down to about 1/8 of an inch, or 3 millimeters. That looks good. Okay. Now we got to just sand that up, and then we're going to cut it off. You got calipers or little wrenches. You can always use those to evaluate the size. I'm going to use a little abrasive paste on here now to get this nice and smooth. One of the main things about these stalks is you want to have them with a nice shape and with a contrasting wood. So if you don't have a walnut or an exotic, you can always dye it. You use leather dye or wood dye. And I put a piece of wood under here in case I fly down and hit it. So we're going to cut this off at about a 45-degree angle. Another way is to just cut it straight across, part it off, and you could use a sander if you have a sander. But I find this to me to be a little bit faster and with less dust. And there we go. And then we could use our fine sandpaper to just kind of clean up that edge a little bit. And there we go. Now all we got to do is drill a hole at an angle. Now we've got a hole that's 9/64, it's the right size, but I don't want to stick the stalk in like that. It just doesn't look it good. We want to bring it in from an angle. So I'm going to use this as a starter hole, and then we're going to drill 9/64 in from an angle. So I've got this coming in from an angle into that hole, about 45-degree angle. So that stalk will, and then I like to line up this top flat so it kind of matches. And there we go. Then we're going to come back to this. And then we pull this out, tighten it up, and turn another one. A very elegant way to add the blossom or the calyx to the bottom of your fruit is to use a whole clove, remove the little ball out of it, and it gives you a nice effect. And then we're just going to drill a suitable hole, and we'll put a drop of CA in it. Just poke it down in there. This gives a very elegant look to it. The way I've done it in the past, and certainly it saved the $7 I spent on this bottle of cloves, which is an awful lot of apples, is to simply burn the bottom, stick a skew in the bottom a few times, and then use your pyrography tool, either a shader or a skew, and kind of darken it. And that looks pretty good too. Depends on how much money you want to spend.
Within the next few days, I'll be doing a video on how to turn a pear, and I'll have a link up here. If it's not available now, it will be in within a week for that video. Your questions and comments are important, so leave them below. And remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back, you hear?